You're listening to the Zandberben Report, where wealth strategies and investment wisdom collide with Bart Zandbergen, your distinguished host and certified financial planner.
Welcome to the Zandberben Report, a showcase for wealth strategies and investment wisdom that's essential for our evolving world. I'm your host, Bart Zandbergen. In studio, as usual, the one, the only, Paul.
Yes, sir. Boy, we were cutting this one close today here. We were out with the helicopters flying in your guest here. He had a pretty good excuse.
Yeah, pretty good. But before we get there, Paul, I have to ask you something.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was on the 405 freeway this morning, and
Okay.
I saw there was a Porsche Panamera kind of zoom by me.
One of my favorite cars.
Yeah, well, well, that's one of the reasons I'm going to ask, because
Okay.
the license plate said Talk OC.
Oh.
Or, no, OC Talk. So.
Oh, you're kidding, because that's a license plate I always thought I would get. Well, wouldn't you know, somebody's grabbed it already.
All right, so it wasn't you.
Wasn't me.
Okay.
Could
All right.
be.
All right.
If we get a few more shows, maybe.
Well, I am very, very happy to have a friend of mine and someone I think is going to be very interesting for the show, Dr. Taylor Pollei, plastic surgeon extraordinaire. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Thank you much, Bart. Glad to be here.
And thanks for making it. We understand that you had a surgery that kept you a bit, so
Close call, but first things first, right?
yeah.
Zandberben Report first.
I would have told him, sorry, we got to fix your nose later. That's as good as we can get it right now here. And
So, Taylor, I think just to get started, let's tell the audience a little bit about yourself. You're young. I'm not going to tell people how young you are, with a family and your own practice. How did you get to where you are today?
So, good question. 37 for the record.
Oh, you're going to go there.
Not necessary, but
Okay.
we'll go right out there.
Okay.
Wife and 4 kids. Here in South County for about 3 years now. So my wife's the Orange County native, and we always kind of knew this was the end-up spot. And it works well for someone who's doing plastic surgery, facial plastic surgery that I do. So it kind of rewinds back to always wanting to be a doc from the beginning. I always saw myself as a surgeon, even drew myself in scrubs with an OR overhead page when I was in 5th grade.
Wow.
My mom showed me that picture I drew a couple of weeks ago, and it kind of made me laugh. So it was
Wow.
always on the radar. But got here realizing I love surgery, I love what I do, but I like kind of being the one to do what I want when I want, take care of patients when I want, where I want, how I want, and kind of doing your own thing, starting a business and becoming that doctor turned businessman was the only way for me to really integrate that and really have a true doctor-patient relationship that 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago was the common.
Yeah. Great. I want to hear a lot more about that. So, on your way to plastic surgery, did you have any other specialties? Did you do internal medicine, or did you go straight through?
So I was straight through. I right from college into med school, and then straight from med school into residency fellowship all the way. I knew from the beginning it was a surgical specialty. It was either facial plastic surgery, where I ended up, plastic surgery, which traditionally does more body work as well. I enjoyed working with patients that had lost a lot of weight and wanted some body reconstruction, but I found that I'm kind of an OCD perfectionist individual, which has its pros and cons. In this case, has its pros.
I feel you.
And a few of us do. And working on the face specifically just lends itself towards that. It's something that's out there, it's exposed, it's open. You can't really hide anything. And it's something that takes a lot of trust from patients to reach out and say, I'm in, let's do this.
Yeah.
So it really gives me that opportunity to build that doctor-patient relationship in a really personal, really kind of humbling way.
So facial, which we've talked about before, what are probably the top 3 primary procedures that I would say that you do that with regards to facial?
Gotcha. So we kind of we divide it into non-surgical and surgical. In the non-surgical side, those that are surgical trained tend to be more neurotoxin or filler injections, stuff that's usually done in the office. And that climbs up on the list of things performed. From a surgical perspective, I trained heavily in the reconstructive world, so I do have a lot of reconstructive experience. I prefer the cosmetic world just because it's a little more conducive to the family life, to the overall lifestyle that I would like as a soccer coach for my kids and hanging out at the beach on Saturday, etc. But I would say if we had to label it, I'd say skin cancer reconstruction, and then shortly above that would be facelift, eyelid surgery. They're kind of neck and neck maybe for number one.
Okay. Oh, so interesting, both on the reconstructive and on the cosmetic side, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, and you're in the right place for both. We got plenty of sun.
Yeah. It was down to Nebraska or, no, I'm just kidding. Orange County is a hub. It really is.
Yeah. I'm going to save one question for a little bit later, but getting to know you as I have over the last several months, I can tell that you have, there's a lot that drives you, and you're motivated by other things than certainly just money. Although there's nothing wrong with money, but I think they have other motivations.
Fair.
So I like to ask my guests, like, what is the why? Why? You told me you've told us that it's something you've always wanted to do, but why?
Good question. I think there's really two, and I think so really why number one and why number two. The most important really is, for me, family. Doing what I do lets me be present. It lets me be a husband and a father and be involved in a way that I always wanted to be. So that's why number one. But closely behind, and you could even put them together, is I really do enjoy when I'm sitting in that, whether it be an exam room or consultation room or speaking with a patient after surgery, that just true relationship that you have. It's kind of one where you trust each other, and for me, it's very humbling where they say, okay, this is what I want. I trust you to do it. It's kind of like a good old-fashioned shake hands, let's go. Mm-hmm. And I love being able to have that real personable relationship where I'll see a patient back week after week, day after day sometimes, and then you don't see them for a year or so or more often, and they pop back on in, and you can pick right up where you left off. So it's really relationship building. Yeah,
well, that's really nice. That's nice. You've got to have some stories.
Oh my goodness, do I?
I'll probably ask for a couple, but yeah, from this perspective, maybe this is more reconstructive than it is cosmetic, but a success story, if you will, where someone came in with maybe just feeling either inadequate or not didn't have any self-respect or something like that, and then maybe their life changed somehow. Maybe I'm reaching too far, but
no.
you kind of have stories like that.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about the indentured servitude that is surgical training is you really have the opportunity to experience multiple interactions, and you're in multiple healthcare settings. I was in 4 different states throughout my training, so you do have a lot of vast opportunities. And mine dated even back to when I was in college. I was an orderly, which is a good old-fashioned term for grunt in the OR. So even in my college days, getting called at night to go into the hospital to help, it kind of predates all the way back to that. I would say, interestingly, you wouldn't think it, but a lot of the cosmetic patients I have are truly grateful and awesome patients. Most people, when they think of a cosmetic surgical patient, they think of someone who's high maintenance or entitled, who doesn't really have much benefit. But when you step back and look, and you see that it's someone like your next door neighbor, a family member, and you looked at it something that's, say they have a problem, whether it be a bump on their nose or some saggy neck skin or their eyelids are droopy, it usually comes back to there's a reason, like their granddaughter says, why do you look angry all the time, or something. So a lot of those little interactions are awesome. And when patients wake up from surgery and I can say everything went amazing, and then I see them over the days and weeks, and as the healing ensues and they see these changes, that's really gratifying. Those experiences are more often, and there's not really one salient. The reconstructive world tends to be where you get those salient experiences. 2 that I can think of. One was when I was on a humanitarian aid trip in Mexico. I speak Spanish as well as English, which is huge in this case. Yeah. And I had a little family, parents as old as I was, and I was in my young 20s. And they had a little kid with a cleft palate who, you see this cleft palate, you see the cleft lip, and you see how it's affected their life. And the kid's, 3 to 4, and the kids are teasing him at school, and he's not developing right. So to be able to spend just an hour or 2 and make a difference in a kid's life that will be permanent, it's hard to say that that's not gratifying. Wow. Same thing if it's someone who has a really bad dog bite to the face. I had one gal that was at her bachelorette party, surprise party, and got bit by a dog, and it was incredibly extensive. All both of her lips completely taken off, and don't want to be too graphic on the air, but and just the opportunity to then take something that's clearly broken and fix it in a way that makes that patient be able to interact in society and, you know, grow back some of that self-esteem and some of that you know, self-worth that might have disappeared.
I mean, the confidence and the self-esteem, that's got to be huge for some things
it's
like
amazing.
that.
Amazing.
Is a cleft palate really, is that all it is a 1 to 2 hour procedure?
It is. It's amazing. And it's something that here in such a developed country we don't realize and we take for granted. But in these third world countries, Africa, you know, places over, you know, East Asia, South America, it's still something that on a day-to-day basis, you know, people are dealing with. And it's something that's so easily correctable. And it just makes you want to reach out and help in any way possible.
Wow. Is there anything along the lines of a cleft palate that would be super common in the U.S. or third world?
You know, it's funny enough, it has the same incidence rate here. They're just picked up and corrected early on.
Real early,
they're actually detected usually with an ultrasound before the baby's even born, so you can have an entire interdisciplinary team with the speech therapist and the feeding therapist, the surgeon, everyone, and then the surgeries are staged in a way that it affects the child negatively as little as possible. And that same benefit just is not present in these third world countries.
Wow. So I think the theme of the self-respect and so forth and the confidence, I've got to believe it transfers over into anyone's just normal life, right?
Huge.
Whether you're a business person or, heck, if you're a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad, just the confidence to be the best you can be, you must see that.
So it's funny, and this is where my brother, I'll throw him under the bus, he's an orthodontist in Nashville. he kind of jokes around with what I do, and I say, hey, you're just straightening teeth for a living. You know, it's the same thing in theory. Yeah. But, you know, even just yesterday, I had a patient, you know, mid-50s, gentleman, upper eyelid skin that was baggy and it bothered him, and he comes in, says, can you fix it? I say, yeah, and he's on cloud 9. So it's one of those things where it might be something that to one potential patient doesn't bother them, or to someone walking down the street, they'd say that's the last thing on my mind. But, you know, it all comes down to how much it affects that person. And when it's something that's easily fixable and it's something that fits for them, it's kind of like a why not.
Paul, there's hope for you and I both.
Yeah.
Mid-50s and above.
I'm thinking it's looking better to me now here.
I see you making are you making a list of things you're going to get for that checked?
Check it down starting from my head to my toes there. I think you could have a lot of work on it. Can I ask you a question? As you allow me to jump in here.
Love to.
I was saying earlier before the air, you know, plastic surgery seems to go through bursts of news coverage. Something new comes out, or some procedure, or good or bad, you read about things. I haven't heard much about plastic surgery lately. Is it in a quiet period? Is it in a growth period? Or am I just missing it?
You might be missing it. It might be because politics have overtaken so much from a bandwidth perspective. But we always say that there's really nothing new in the cosmetic surgery, reconstructive surgery, or even just overall skin rejuvenation world. Things have been there, things have been tried. Those things that are tried and tested tend to stick around, but there's always a kind of a cyclical nature. I would say if there's a lull right now, it probably won't be for long. This seems to be something that's kind of popping back up in people's minds regularly.
So is there anything new coming up? Anything? That's what I'm trying to get at. Anything
hot
on the topic that I just missed here somehow?
You know, there's some from hair restoration, which is kind of a big one. That's something that's hitting a burst. There's a lot of skincare products that are showing a lot of promise, whereas before it was kind of SPF and moisturizers and some retinol. But I do think there's a lot of technology, kind of like the cancer world has seen a resurgence with this really targeted therapy where we can use your own immune system and genes. I think that moving into the cosmetic world is going to make some waves.
Wow. All right. All right, Paul, it looks like it's time for a quick break, so we'll be right back.
Imagine what it would feel like to lose everything. Your job, your home, your family, your dignity. This has happened to thousands of the men, women, veterans, and young adults we serve at Working Wardrobes. What do we do to help? We provide career development services, life skills workshops, job skills training. We provide the perfect interview outfit, and we get clients placed in jobs. Call Working Wardrobes, 714-210-2460. Donate, volunteer, invest, hire.
When you use the Premier Rewards Gold Card from American Express, the rewards points can keep on multiplying. Buy 3 with triple points on airfare. Buy 2 with double points on gas and groceries. And a single point for pretty much every other dollar you spend on the card. Then, start choosing from over 1 million rewards to redeem all those points. Apply today and the annual fee for the first year is on us. Call 1-800-AXP-GOLD or visit axpgold.com. The annual fee for the card is $175. See terms, conditions, and restrictions at axpgold.com.
All right, we're back with Bart and his guest.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So we were talking off mic here just for a second. So men and women, it's not uncommon for men to come in for elective, right?
Correct. It's still about 95.5.
It's still that,
Well,
that
okay,
broad.
fine. 92.8. I
Yeah.
mean, make your number up, but predominantly
so-
women.
Okay. All right. Let's switch gears just a little bit. We've got some time left. So
I have to pick up on this one, Chris. I can't let that sit. So if
There
men
we
do,
go.
if men do
Here's
come
Paul.
in, I'm just thinking here. So what if men do come in? What do they come in for?
Great question. So number 1, I would say, is upper eyelid skin redundancy. That's an upper eyelid blepharoplasty. Number 2 would be hair restoration. And it used to be the old strip along the back of the head, as we were talking about.
Yeah.
Now it's more advanced with robotic surgery. Number 3 is neck lift, jawline, facelift type surgery. It's a little harder because you can't hide the incisions quite as well as you could in
Yeah.
a female with the long hair. But men are bothered by that under neck
yeah,
little skin laxity too.
yeah. I don't really want to go here, but there's certainly some examples of men who are in the public eye that clearly have gone too far.
110%. That's
Yeah.
usually the brow lift, the
Yeah.
Mickey Rourke-ish. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention any names, but yeah, it gets
Yeah.
so there's the line, right?
Totally. And
Yeah.
it's all about and in my world I say on a daily basis I manage expectations, and that's really what it comes down to, but
Yeah.
it's all about a natural outcome versus something doesn't look quite right.
Yeah.
And if you can maintain that natural outcome and
Yeah.
improve and rejuvenate,
Yeah.
game on, that's the goal.
Yeah.
So again, I have to ask another question. How do we get the Mickey Rourke look? So many people go out and they think this looks good.
You know-
I mean, did they tell their plastic surgeon keep going? And he says, no, that's going to be ridiculous. And they say, no, that's what I want. Or do they just? It's hard to believe Mickey Rourke and people like that are going to the wrong plastic surgeon.
No, and they're not. And that then begs the question, what's our end point here? Is our end point a rejuvenated, more youthful, more rested appearance, or is it a more drastic, visible appearance? Someone who's 60 just can't have 30-year-old eyelids, or it just looks unnatural. The brow position just you can't rewind it 40 years and say, oh, that looks good. You can improve it and restore, but there's that fine line. And it's not the surgeon, it's not the patient, it's just kind of a combination of everything.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. You said something that actually, as different as we are in what we do, there's a common theme, and that is manage expectations.
I am chief expectation manager. That is actually, and then I'm a surgeon.
Yeah.
And then I own a business, and
Yeah.
then et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So there lies the overlap, because existing clients, prospective clients will come in maybe with an expectation of 15%, 20% a year returns, and there's certainly an expectation needs to be reevaluated or managed. So it's nice to know that we have some common ground. Another place where we have common ground is we both run businesses. So, and I suspect you probably go through some of the same challenges as I do and many others. And so can you talk a little bit about, starting from, were you ever in practice with someone else as an employee before you started your own practice?
So I was never officially in practice as an employee during if you think back to the good old-fashioned apprenticeship, trade training programs, that's really what we go through. So, college graduated in 2014 from the university, then med school for 4 years, then residency at the Mayo Clinic for 5 doing head and neck surgery, and then an additional year doing a fellowship in just cosmetic and facial plastic surgery. It's one of those where you see different healthcare systems, you see different surgeons, you see how things are done differently, and although you're not a quote-unquote employee, you kind of are, but you have the opportunity to take the good and the bad and meld it into what you want. So I always knew that I wanted the autonomy, but I didn't want to have to put up with how things were necessarily done in a way that I didn't like them. The OCD, again, coming back, that's kind of a common theme. But I have had the opportunity, including right now, I spend my Fridays up in Beverly Hills with a very successful cosmetic dermatologist, Dr. Mark Rubin at the Lasky Clinic. So that's a partnership. However, when you have that age disparity of 20 and change years, you do kind of get a little bit of that I don't say employee relationship, but you're young on the totem pole, and so you're learning and growing and taking in everything that's around you. But I've always, fortunately, had either a training experience or time to jump out and do my thing.
Yeah. Did you have any business training? And I asked that because early in my career, I worked with a lot of physicians, generally early on, and the common feedback was, we learned everything about medicine. We have no idea what an IRA is, how to set up a business, what books are. Did you have any sort of training in that area?
I think no training is an overstatement. I think I think you have so much of your brain power taken up with other things, more practical, technical things, that it's just not even on your radar screen. And it's unfortunate. I was blessed in that during my time at the Mayo Clinic, I was able to spend several months with a similar background of training, cosmetic facial plastic surgeon in Scottsdale, Arizona, who'd been out for about 20 years. He's 20 years my senior by a week. And so I was able to have some kind of on-the-job training, but not just the surgical technical or the patient care, but also how does he, and he was a, businessman, started his own practice from scratch, had the growing pains that we all do. But to see where he was able to arrive 20 years in, and where he had his office that was a finely, working machine, and he had a great schedule, lifestyle, patients were happy. It was really validating for me to see and say, I can do this. I can be there.
So one of the questions I was going to ask is, and it sounds like he may fill that role, is do you have any mentors that you've learned from? Would you call him a mentor?
I totally would. And we kind of officially and unofficially refer to these kind of individuals as mentors. My fellowship director, Dr. Edwin Williams, who's up in Albany, New York, is a very close friend and mentor. Usually once we branch out from the head and neck surgery world into facial plastics, you kind of cross that chasm into the cosmetic world. You leave behind a little, but still some of my close colleagues from the Mayo Clinic I'm tight with. Those that kind of had that rite of passage at the same time that have also been out of training for the same duration of time as me, we're very close. We text back and forth and say, what would you do here? Here's what I did. What do you think? And so you can, I don't want to say validate each other, but you can bounce ideas back and forth. But having those mentors that have been there and done that, and then those that are suffering with you, it really kind of helps buoy you up.
What I've found very common, Paul, you probably recall this too, I think with every guest that I think I've interviewed, I always ask that question. I'm only interviewing successful people and whatever they do, and without a doubt, everyone has had some sort of coach or mentor or something. And I just think that regardless of what you do, I think it's important, whether you're a Tiger Woods or you're Taylor Pollei, doesn't matter. I think a coach is going to help.
I mean, I would love to say we can do it on our own, and that our ideas are the best. However, if someone's been there and done that, they've had some growing pains.
And you mentioned OCD a few times, and I always laugh a little bit because I share that element. And then I think about, for any of us how I know you is from 5 o'clock in the morning at the gym, I'm going to say 80% of the people that are in there at 5 o'clock in the morning have some level of OCD.
Because they got to go and get going. They've got life to live,
that's right. So in addition to so you're running the business, in addition to your mentors / coaches, any particular authors that inspire you, or what can I say, podcasts? I think you mentioned that you're kind of new to podcast listening.
I'm new to the podcast world. I'm kind of a traditional hard copy book and audio book. Back in the day, I'd grab them from the library during my residency in med school. And the early Jim Collins, everyone I think has read E-Myth. Stephen Covey's great with helping you organize your life. And I do feel that even though I was in the medical world, I kind of had to draw towards that. And I think that's what lent itself towards me becoming where I am now. But that's not normal in the medical world. Having had a lot of experience with a lot of others during training and thereafter, most don't. So, there's been a couple good ones recently. Essentialism is a really good one that I find that I keep coming back to these. How can I make my life a little bit more efficient, a little more relaxed, get a little more family time, and have more time for business too.
I'm writing down Essentialism. I've heard of the book, and I haven't read that yet.
And here's the funny thing, and like Darren Hardy is one of those, kind of typicals where it's nothing new. We know this stuff.
Exactly.
It's just how do you apply it in a way that you can stick to it, maintain, and get the results.
All right, we're going to wrap up pretty soon, but I know we have a bunch of stories. Is there anything else, whether it's reconstructive or anything successful? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if there's something that really inspires.
Yeah, so interestingly, again, going back to what I said earlier about some people think cosmetic surgery patients are a little crazy. They're really not. They're actually way more normal than a lot of other medical patients. But unfortunately, in the reconstructive world, sometimes what we're reconstructing is self-inflicted. And I have had, especially during my fellowship, I had a back-to-back. It was probably the hardest month of my life. I had 2 self-inflicted gunshot wounds to the face. This is during my time up in Albany. And I was logging, you know, whether it was probably a 15, 20-hour surgery from the beginning, and then on a daily, weekly basis, takes backs to the OR and additional reconstructions. And I logged more OR time during that window than ever. But interestingly, I wasn't just in the operating room more. I was with the patients' families more than I ever expected. And you really start to see patients for who they are, for what they're going through. And I've seen patients that, you know, because of a really, you know, difficult mental illness or whatever, do something that they later regret. And in the reconstructive effort, I can be part of that, them getting back on their feet.
Yeah.
Now, it's different than, you know, my 73-year-old little old lady that comes in and wants a facelift, you know, different mindset.
Yeah.
But in theory, as you kind of spend these time with these people and realize that they have families and spouses and siblings and kids, and you really get to know them for who they are, I'll tell you, these are people that I'll still keep in contact with.
Yeah.
These are patients, it's been, you know, a few years, but
Yeah.
you still touch base and, hey, how are you? How are you
Yeah.
hanging in there kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
That's so great. So great. I'm not surprised that you have that kind of relationship. All right, Taylor, we're just about out of time. I want to tell you it's been such a great pleasure having you
Well,
in
thank
studio
you. Appreciate
today. If you've listened to a couple of my podcasts, you know what's coming up. It's called the Final Thought Question. And that is, if you could share with us and the audience your ultimate lesson learned as your career, during your career as a surgeon.
Ultimate lesson learned, I would say, and this is especially applicable in my new endeavor where I just kind of jumped in with a existing med spa in Laguna Niguel and establishing an aesthetic center and really integrating my surgical practice. It's something where the idea of something is so intriguing and so amazing, but then when you step back and you look at the practical component of it, you say, oh my gosh, what am I thinking? And I look at it from other avenues in my life. When I'm in the OR, I game plan everything. I map it out. I've got a 20-year plan in my life. You know, I don't go to the gym without a plan for that day.
Yeah.
So I really have to say it's opened my eyes that it's not just personal aspects of my life, but especially the professional business side.
Yeah.
Not that I came in without an attack plan, but I didn't even realize what obstacles would exist. And I want to say it was very humbling, and it kind of opened my eyes. And my big take home was, man, if it's like this in business, it's got to be like this in every other aspect, parenting, etc.
Yeah.
And just in the last 6 months since I've really been integrating and building this practice of mine, I've noticed other aspects of my life where I'm totally, I walk in and I'm unaware of the amount of work, energy, effort that it'll take, but a little planning and you breeze right through.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. And that applies to pretty much everybody and all we do. So I love that.
Well, thanks.
Great. So, again, thank you for joining us today. I want to remind everybody that you can find the show on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, and you can look us up on all the social medias, including the website, bartzandbergen.com. And for those of you who want to learn more about Taylor, you can visit him at...
So my website is PolleiFacialPlasticSurgery.com. Also presence on Instagram, Facebook, etc.
We're going to have him spell that out. I'm
yeah.
making little hand signals here, like spell it out. Right?
So Pollei is Pollei, and then facial plastic surgery.
Perfect. Oh, all right. Okay. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. We look forward to having you back in the studio again next week. Cheers.
Thank you.
Tune in next week for the latest edition of the Zandberben Report, Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Catch up on our recent shows by visiting www.bartzandbergen.com. Interested in being a featured guest on our show or have a question you'd like to hear us answer on the Zandberben Report? Email podcast@bartzandbergen.com.
The Zandberben Report is a production of OC Talk Radio and is provided for educational purposes only. The content of this program and the views of the guests should not be considered as recommendations by OC Talk Radio or investment advice from the host, Bart Zandbergen, or any other entity attached to this production. Investors should always consult qualified financial, investment, tax, or legal professionals prior to investing.
Let's face it, not all company challenges are the same. which is why Strategic Market Intelligence can help identify the actionable information you need to be more competitive. Gain a better understanding of your brand, competition, best prospects, or new product opportunities to generate greater revenues in 2015. Call 949-357-9547 or visit www.strategicmarketintelligence.com.